Every time a new squad was formed, her name was skipped. Too quiet. Too calm. Not command presence. But when the CO was hit during a live mission and chaos followed, she didn't wait for orders. She gave them. Cleared comms, restructured movement, coordinated the evac. Her voice, steady and sure, cut through the panic. And when they returned to base, shaken but alive, someone asked who was in charge out there. They all answered the same name. The leader they never picked had just led them home. From which training facility around the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories that blend tactical precision with unexpected leadership, consider subscribing for more content that explores how true command presence emerges not from volume, but from competence when it matters most. The morning briefing at Fort Bragg's Special Operations Training Command had begun with the familiar rhythm of another Tuesday assessment cycle. Captain Jessica Reed entered the climate-controlled Tactical Operations Center at exactly 0530 hours, her combat boots silent against the polished linoleum floor despite the early hour. The facility, designed to simulate real-world command environments, hummed with the constant activity of advanced training scenarios that pushed Special Forces candidates beyond conventional limits. Banks of monitors displayed live feeds from training areas across the sprawling North Carolina installation, where future operators learned to think, move, and lead under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stood at attention beside the primary assessment station, her dark eyes focused on holographic displays showing real-time tracking data from ongoing field exercises. At 29, Santos possessed tactical awareness that consistently scored in the top 5% of special operations candidates, with advanced certifications in combat medicine, communication systems, and small unit tactics. Her personnel file contained commendations from 3 combat deployments, expert marksmanship ratings across multiple weapon systems, and psychological evaluation scores that placed her among the most stable and reliable operators in her class. Status report, Sergeant, Captain Reed said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned respect through competence rather than rank alone. Reed's weathered features reflected 15 years of military service, including multiple combat tours where she had transitioned from enlisted infantry to commissioned officer through battlefield performance that couldn't be ignored by even the most traditional senior commanders. Santos maintained her position of attention while activating the primary tactical display. Ma'am, Exercise Granite Shield is proceeding according to timeline. Current scenario places candidates in a simulated hostage rescue operation with multiple variables including civilian populations, hostile terrain, and degraded communication capabilities. She gestured toward the main monitoring screen, where color-coded indicators tracked 8 different candidate teams moving through a mock urban environment designed to replicate conditions found in modern conflict zones. Blue markers showed friendly positions, red indicated simulated enemy forces, and yellow represented civilian assets requiring protection during tactical operations. Team performance metrics? Reed inquired, settling into her observation chair while studying data streams that measured everything from individual marksmanship accuracy to group decision-making effectiveness under stress. 7 teams are performing within expected parameters for this stage of assessment, Santos replied, highlighting specific indicators on the tactical display. Response times, tactical coordination, and mission completion rates all fall within standard ranges for special operations candidates at this level. Reed noticed Santos's careful phrasing. And the 8th team. Santos activated a secondary display showing detailed performance data for Team Charlie, led by Staff Sergeant David Morrison, a 6'3" former Ranger with a reputation for aggressive leadership and decisive action. Morrison's team consistently scored highest in physical fitness assessments, weapons proficiency, and tactical movement exercises that required bold, immediate action. Team Charlie maintains the highest overall performance ratings, Santos continued, with consistently superior completion times and tactical effectiveness ratings across multiple scenario types. Reed studied the data, noting patterns that extended beyond simple performance metrics. But Santos hesitated momentarily, then activated additional data streams showing communication patterns, decision-making timelines, and stress response indicators for individual team members. Team Charlie's success appears heavily dependent on scenarios that reward immediate, aggressive response. In situations requiring extended observation, detailed planning, or adaptive strategy, their performance ratings show more variability. The observation was diplomatically phrased, but Reed understood the underlying assessment. Morrison's team excelled when problems could be solved through superior firepower and aggressive tactics, but struggled with complex scenarios requiring patience, analysis, or unconventional approaches. And Team Delta? Reed asked, referring to the unit that consistently ranked last in overall performance assessments despite containing some of the most technically skilled individuals in the candidate pool. Santos activated tracking data for Team Delta, showing movement patterns that appeared cautious compared to the bold, direct approaches favored by other teams. The team leader, Sergeant Lisa Chun, possessed technical qualifications that exceeded most of her peers, but her leadership style emphasized careful observation and methodical planning over immediate action. Team Delta continues to show the longest mission completion times, Santos reported. However, their casualty rates and simulation exercises remain significantly lower than other teams, and their success rate in complex scenarios involving civilian protection has been consistently superior. Reed studied Chin's team performance data with professional interest. On paper, Chin appeared to be an ideal special operations candidate. Expert marksman, advanced medical training, fluency in 3 languages, and psychological profiles indicating exceptional stability under stress. But her assessment scores consistently placed her in the bottom third of candidates due to what evaluators characterized as insufficient command presence and overly cautious tactical decision-making. Specific examples of the cautious behavior? Reed requested. Santos brought up video footage from recent training exercises showing Chin's team during various tactical scenarios. In yesterday's urban assault exercise, Sergeant Chin's team spent 14 minutes conducting reconnaissance before initiating their approach. Standard doctrine recommends 6 to 8 minutes for similar scenarios. The video showed Chun positioned behind cover, methodically studying the target building through binoculars, while her team maintained security positions. Her movements appeared deliberate rather than urgent, her communication with team members quiet and controlled rather than assertive and commanding. But their assault, when they finally initiated it, was executed flawlessly, Santos continued. 0 simulation casualties, all objectives achieved, and complete tactical surprise maintained throughout the operation. Reed watched Chin's team move through the scenario with precision that bordered on choreography. Each member knew their role, their positioning, their responsibilities without requiring constant direction from their leader. The team functioned with an efficiency that suggested extensive preparation and thorough understanding of the tactical situation. What do the other candidates think of Chin's approach? Reed asked. Santos pulled up assessment reports submitted by fellow candidates as part of peer evaluation requirements. Comments are generally respectful of her technical competence, but multiple evaluations note concerns about her leadership style during high-stress situations. Reed read through several peer assessments, noting recurring themes. Lacks command presence during crisis situations. Too hesitant to make rapid decisions under pressure. Excellent technical skills, but insufficient leadership aggression for special operations requirements. The assessments painted a picture of someone who was highly competent individually, but who failed to inspire confidence in others during the chaotic, rapidly evolving situations that defined modern special operations missions. Before Reed could request additional details, the Operations Center's main entrance opened and Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison entered, accompanied by 2 senior NCOs and a civilian observer Reed didn't recognize. Harrison, an imposing figure whose presence filled any room he entered, commanded immediate attention through both his physical stature and his reputation as one of the Army's most successful special operations commanders. "Ladies," Harrison announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "I'm here to observe final assessment exercises before we make selections for the next operational deployment cycle." The training center's atmosphere shifted perceptibly as Harrison took his position at the primary observation station. Reed and Santos maintained their professional demeanor while recognizing that their assessments were now being evaluated by someone whose opinions would directly influence candidate selection and future assignments. "Colonel, would you like a comprehensive briefing on current exercise progress?" Reed offered. Harrison studied the tactical displays showing ongoing operations across multiple training areas. Give me an assessment of your top leadership candidates, Captain, who shows the command presence necessary for real-world special operations missions. Read activated performance data for the highest-scoring candidates, beginning with Morrison's Team Charlie. Staff Sergeant Morrison has consistently demonstrated superior tactical leadership across multiple exercise types. His team shows exceptional performance in direct action scenarios, rapid response situations, and high-intensity operations requiring immediate decision-making. Harrison nodded approvingly as he reviewed Morrison's performance metrics. Excellent. This is exactly the type of leadership profile we need for upcoming operations in the Horn of Africa. Bold decision-making, aggressive tactics, and the ability to inspire confidence in subordinates during chaotic situations. Santos exchanged a glance with Reed, both recognizing the direction of Harrison's preferences. The civilian observer, a man in his early 50s wearing unmarked clothing, but carrying himself with obvious military bearing, studied the displays with particular attention to detailed performance breakdowns rather than overall rankings. And your other top candidates? Harrison continued. Reed presented data for the next 3 highest-ranked team leaders, each showing similar patterns of aggressive leadership and rapid decision-making. Their performance profiles aligned closely with traditional special operations selection criteria emphasizing bold action, physical courage, and the ability to maintain team cohesion during intense combat scenarios. What about this team? The civilian observer asked, pointing to Team Delta's performance data displayed on a secondary monitor. Harrison glanced at the display showing Chin's team statistics. Team Delta has consistently ranked in the bottom tier of assessed units. Excessive caution, insufficient command presence, and tactical approaches that prioritize observation over action. The civilian observer studied Chin's detailed performance data with obvious interest. But their casualty rates are remarkably low, and their success rates in complex scenarios are actually superior to higher-ranked teams. Harrison's expression showed polite disagreement. Success in training scenarios doesn't necessarily translate to effectiveness in real-world operations where hesitation can get people killed. Special operations requires leaders who can make life-or-death decisions in seconds, not minutes. Reed found herself in the uncomfortable position of defending assessments. She had some doubts about herself. Sir, Sergeant Chin's approach does show some unique characteristics that might be valuable in specific operational contexts. Captain, Harrison interrupted. I've led special operations teams in 7 combat deployments across 4 different theaters. The leaders who keep their people alive and accomplish impossible missions are the ones who can act decisively when conventional approaches fail. Overthinking gets people killed. The civilian observer continued studying Team Delta's performance data without comment, but Reed noticed his focus on metrics that weren't typically emphasized in standard assessments. Communication effectiveness during crisis situations, long-term mission success rates, and team member retention statistics all favored Chin's methodical approach over Morrison's aggressive leadership style. As they discussed candidate assessments, the tactical displays began showing alert indicators from the ongoing field exercise. Exercise Control was implementing unplanned scenario modifications designed to test candidate adaptability under unexpected conditions. Looks like we're about to see how these leaders handle real crisis situations, Harrison observed with obvious interest. Santos activated communication channels, providing real-time audio from team leaders coordinating with their units during the evolving scenario. Morrison's voice came through clearly, issuing rapid orders and maintaining aggressive forward momentum despite changing conditions. Charlie lead, maintaining assault approach. Enemy contact front, engaging immediately. All units, advance and overwhelm. Harrison nodded approvingly. This is exactly what I want to see. Decisive leadership, aggressive tactics, and the confidence to maintain pressure despite unexpected developments. Chin's team communication presented a stark contrast to Morrison's approach. Her voice remained calm and controlled as she adapted to changing conditions through methodical assessment and careful coordination. Delta lead to all units. Pause current movement, assess new intelligence, and prepare for modified approach based on updated threat assessment. Harrison frowned at the apparent hesitation. She's losing precious time while the situation develops. In real combat, that kind of delay could be catastrophic. But as the exercise continued, the civilian observer's attention remained focused on Chen's tactical decision-making process. Her pause to assess new information was allowing her team to identify threat patterns that other teams were missing in their rush to maintain aggressive momentum. Santos pointed to emerging tactical data on her monitoring station. "Sir, we're seeing some interesting developments in team positioning and threat recognition." The displays showed Morrison's team Charlie maintaining rapid forward movement, while Chen's team Delta had repositioned to observation points that provided superior overwatch of the entire operational area. Morrison's aggressive approach was achieving faster mission completion times, but Chen's cautious positioning was revealing tactical information that hadn't been apparent from initial reconnaissance. Both approaches are achieving their immediate objectives, Reed observed diplomatically, but they're gathering different types of intelligence and establishing different tactical advantages. Harrison studied the evolving situation with professional interest. "Captain, in real-world operations, we don't have the luxury of extended observation and analysis. Missions succeed or fail based on leaders who can act quickly and decisively with incomplete information." The civilian observer finally spoke, his voice carrying quiet authority. "Colonel Harrison, what if the incomplete information leads to tactical situations that require more than aggressive action to resolve successfully?" Harrison turned to face the observer directly. "Sir, with respect, aggressive action properly executed can overcome most tactical disadvantages. Hesitation and overthinking create vulnerabilities that enemies will exploit." As they debated leadership philosophies, the tactical situation in the field exercise took an unexpected turn. Exercise Control implemented a scenario modification that transformed the straightforward hostage rescue into a complex multi-threat environment involving civilian populations, multiple enemy positions, and degraded communication capabilities. Morrison's aggressive approach suddenly encountered complications that hadn't been apparent during initial planning. His team's rapid advance had positioned them in a tactical situation where continued aggressive action would likely result in significant simulated casualties among both team members and civilian assets. Chen's methodical positioning allowed her team to recognize the complexity of the new situation immediately and begin coordinating a response that addressed multiple threat vectors simultaneously. "Interesting development," the civilian observer noted quietly. Santos activated detailed communication feeds, allowing them to monitor how each team leader adapted to the rapidly evolving scenario. Morrison's voice showed increasing tension as his straightforward tactical approach encountered obstacles that couldn't be overcome through superior firepower and aggressive movement. "Charlie, lead to control. Request immediate air support and additional reinforcement. Current tactical situation requires escalated response." Chen's communication remained calm and controlled as she coordinated a more complex response that addressed civilian protection, multi-directional threats, and team security simultaneously. "Delta, lead to all units. Implementing modified approach based on updated threat assessment. Medical team establish casualty collection point. Overwatch teams provide security while assault elements advance through covered approaches." Harrison watched the developing situation with growing concern. Morrison's team is encountering resistance that requires immediate escalation. Chen's team is overcomplicating a straightforward tactical problem. But as the exercise continued, the tactical advantages of Chen's methodical approach became increasingly apparent. Her team's careful positioning and thorough planning allowed them to address multiple objectives simultaneously, while Morrison's team found themselves committed to a single approach that was becoming less viable as the situation evolved. The civilian observer activated a secondary display showing real-time casualty projections and mission success probabilities based on current tactical positions. "Colonel, the data suggests that methodical planning may be producing superior outcomes in this particular scenario." Harrison studied the projections with obvious reluctance to acknowledge information that contradicted his preferred leadership philosophy. "These are simulation results based on theoretical models. Real combat requires leaders who can maintain momentum and pressure regardless of tactical complications." Reed found herself caught between competing assessment criteria and conflicting leadership philosophies. Her professional obligation was to evaluate candidates based on their ability to succeed in real-world special operations missions, but the definition of success appeared to depend on operational context and mission requirements. As the exercise approached its climax, both teams faced critical decision points that would determine mission success or failure. Morrison's aggressive approach had achieved rapid initial progress, but had positioned his team in a tactical situation requiring immediate action that could result in significant casualties. Chen's methodical approach had taken longer to develop, but had positioned her team to address multiple objectives with significantly lower risk to both team members and civilian assets. Final phase, implementing now. Santos announced as exercise control initiated the climactic portion of the scenario. Morrison's voice came through the communication system with obvious stress and urgency. Charlie lead requesting immediate extraction. Current position untenable. Cannot achieve mission objectives without unacceptable casualty risk. Chen's communication remained steady as her team executed a coordinated operation that addressed all mission requirements simultaneously. Delta lead to control. All objectives achieved. Civilian assets secure. Hostile forces neutralized, team members accounted for and ready for extraction. Harrison stared at the tactical displays showing the final results of both approaches. Morrison's aggressive leadership had achieved rapid initial success, but had ultimately failed to complete mission objectives due to tactical complications that his approach couldn't address. Chen's methodical leadership had achieved complete mission success with 0 simulated casualties. The civilian observer activated comprehensive performance analysis displays showing detailed breakdowns of decision-making effectiveness, tactical adaptability, and mission success rates across multiple scenario types. Colonel, I think we need to reconsider our assessment criteria for special operations leadership. Reed realized that this exercise had become more than a routine candidate evaluation. It had become a fundamental examination of leadership philosophy and tactical doctrine that would influence special operations selection and training for years to come. Sir, she said carefully, both leadership approaches demonstrate valuable characteristics that could be appropriate for different operational contexts. Harrison studied the final exercise results with professional integrity that overcame his personal preferences. Captain Reed, prepare comprehensive assessment reports for both Morrison and Chen. I want detailed analysis of their leadership effectiveness across all scenario types. As the exercise concluded and teams began extraction procedures, Reed understood that the morning's events had revealed something significant about the relationship between leadership style and mission effectiveness. The quiet, methodical approach that had been consistently undervalued might actually represent superior tactical leadership under specific operational conditions. Santos began compiling detailed performance data, while Reed considered the broader implications of what they had observed. Traditional special operations selection criteria emphasized aggressive leadership and rapid decision-making, but modern operational environments increasingly required leaders who could adapt to complex, multifaceted situations that couldn't be resolved through superior firepower alone. The civilian observer approached Reed's workstation with obvious interest in continuing their discussion. Captain, how often do your assessment scenarios test leadership effectiveness in situations that require extended analysis and methodical planning? Reed considered the question carefully. Sir, most of our exercises emphasize rapid response and aggressive action because those characteristics have traditionally been considered essential for special operations missions. But what about missions requiring cultural sensitivity, civilian protection, or multi-phase operations extending over weeks or months? Do those scenarios receive equal emphasis in your assessment process? The question revealed a significant gap in traditional assessment methodology. Reed realized that their selection criteria might be inadvertently screening out candidates whose leadership styles were actually superior for the types of complex, long-term operations that increasingly define modern special operations missions. I think we need to examine our assessment criteria more comprehensively, she admitted. As teams returned from the field exercise, Reed prepared for debriefing sessions that would provide additional insight into leadership effectiveness under stress. Morrison's team members would likely report confidence in their leader's aggressive approach despite the mission failure, while Chen's team members might provide different perspectives on her methodical leadership style. But as Reed considered the morning's events, she suspected that the real lessons learned would extend far beyond individual candidate assessments. The exercise had revealed fundamental questions about the relationship between leadership style and mission effectiveness that would require careful analysis and potentially significant changes to special operations selection and training procedures. The quiet leader who had been consistently undervalued might represent exactly the type of tactical thinking that modern special operations missions required. The challenge would be convincing senior leadership that methodical planning and careful analysis could be just as valuable as aggressive action and rapid decision-making. As Reed began preparing her assessment reports, she realized that this morning's exercise would likely become a case study in special operations training programs for years to come. The leader they had never picked was about to challenge fundamental assumptions about what effective leadership looked like in modern military operations. And the quiet voice that had been dismissed for lacking command presence was about to prove that true leadership wasn't about volume or aggression, but about competence, adaptability, and the wisdom to choose the right approach for each unique situation. 3 weeks later, the comprehensive assessment reports that Reed had prepared were being reviewed by senior leadership at Special Operations Command Headquarters in Tampa, Florida. The analysis of Chin's methodical leadership approach had attracted attention from operational planners developing doctrine for complex, multi-phase missions in contested environments where civilian protection and cultural sensitivity were as important as tactical effectiveness. Morrison had been selected for an aggressive direct action unit operating in conventional combat environments where his leadership style aligned perfectly with mission requirements. Chin had been recommended for a special assignment involving long-term operations in sensitive political environments where her methodical approach and cultural awareness would be essential for mission success. Both officers had found roles where their leadership characteristics matched operational requirements, validating Reed's assessment that effective leadership depended more on situational appropriateness than on adherence to traditional characteristics. The civilian observer, who was later revealed to be a senior Pentagon official responsible for special operations doctrine development, had initiated a comprehensive review of selection criteria and training methodologies. His interest in Chin's performance had been driven by recognition that modern operational environments required leaders capable of thinking beyond traditional tactical approaches. Captain Reed received notification that her assessment methodology and analysis of leadership effectiveness under varying operational conditions had been selected for presentation at the annual Special Operations Symposium. Her work had contributed to evolving understanding of how leadership characteristics should match mission requirements rather than conforming to predetermined templates. Staff Sergeant Santos was assigned to continue developing assessment protocols that evaluated leadership effectiveness across multiple scenario types, ensuring that future candidate selections would identify leaders capable of adapting to the full spectrum of special operations mission requirements. And Sergeant Chun, the quiet leader who had been consistently overlooked, found herself assigned to a classified operation requiring exactly the type of methodical thinking and adaptive leadership that had made her seem unsuitable for traditional special operations roles. Her first mission report, submitted 6 months later from an undisclosed location in Southeast Asia, described successful completion of a complex, multi-phase operation that had required cultural sensitivity, civilian protection, and tactical patience over an extended timeline. The mission had achieved all objectives without a single casualty and had established relationships that would support American interests in the region for years to come. The report concluded with a simple observation. Mission success required leadership characteristics that prioritized careful analysis and methodical planning over aggressive action and rapid decision-making. Tactical situations that appear to require immediate action sometimes benefit more from leaders who can pause, assess, and adapt their approach based on complete understanding of complex operational environments. Reed read the report with professional satisfaction, recognizing that the morning's exercise at Fort Bragg had identified leadership characteristics that proved essential for real-world mission success. The quiet candidate who had seemed unsuitable for special operations had demonstrated exactly the type of tactical thinking that modern missions required. The leader they never picked had led in exactly the way modern operational environments demanded. Her voice, steady and sure, had cut through complexity and confusion to achieve objectives that aggressive approaches couldn't accomplish. And her methodical leadership style, once considered a weakness, had proven to be perfectly suited for missions where success required more than superior firepower and rapid action. In training facilities across the military, assessment criteria were being modified to recognize leadership effectiveness across the full spectrum of operational requirements. The lesson learned was simple but profound. True leadership wasn't about conforming to predetermined characteristics, but about possessing the competence and adaptability to choose the right approach for each unique situation. The quiet voice that had been dismissed for lacking traditional command presence had proven that effective leadership spoke through results rather than volume, through competence rather than aggression, and through wisdom rather than speed. In the complex operational environments that defined modern military missions, those characteristics had proven to be exactly what success required. And in secure facilities around the world, leaders who had once been overlooked were discovering that their methodical approaches and adaptive thinking were precisely the characteristics needed for missions that couldn't be accomplished through traditional tactical approaches. The leaders they never picked were leading missions home successfully, one careful decision at a time. But the real test of Chin's leadership philosophy came 8 months after her initial deployment, during an operation that would define not only her career, but potentially reshape special operations doctrine for the next generation of military leaders. The briefing room at Forward Operating Base Sentinel was located 3 levels underground, buried beneath layers of reinforced concrete and sophisticated electronic countermeasures designed to prevent any possibility of surveillance or intelligence gathering by hostile forces. The facility, positioned strategically in the mountainous terrain between 3 contested territories, served as a coordination hub for the most sensitive special operations missions in the region. Major Patricia Williams entered the secure conference room at exactly 2,100 hours, her expression reflecting the gravity of the mission briefing she was about to deliver. Williams, a career special operations officer with 12 years of combat experience across multiple theaters, had specifically requested Chun for this assignment based on performance reports from her previous missions that emphasized exactly the type of methodical leadership the current situation required. Chun sat at the polished mahogany briefing table alongside 5 other carefully selected operators, each chosen for specific capabilities that conventional special operations teams might lack. The group represented a departure from traditional direct action teams, emphasizing cultural awareness, linguistic capabilities, and tactical patience over purely aggressive combat skills. Ladies and gentlemen, Williams began, activating holographic displays that filled the center of the conference room with 3-dimensional maps and intelligence data. This mission represents one of the most complex operational challenges we've encountered in this theater. The displays showed a region of mountainous terrain marked with multiple contested boundaries, tribal territories, and areas of uncertain political control. Traditional military maps failed to capture the complexity of local power structures, cultural divisions, and historical grievances that define the operational environment. Sergeant First Class Marcus Rodriguez, a communications specialist with extensive experience in unconventional warfare, studied the terrain displays with professional interest. "Ma'am, this doesn't look like terrain where conventional special operations approaches would be effective." Williams nodded approvingly at his assessment. "Exactly correct, Sergeant. This mission requires capabilities that extend far beyond traditional direct action operations." She manipulated the holographic display to show detailed intelligence about local populations, tribal affiliations, and cultural patterns that had been developing over centuries of complex political relationships. 3 weeks ago, a humanitarian aid convoy was captured by forces operating in this region. The convoy included medical supplies desperately needed by civilian populations, as well as 4 aid workers whose safety has become an international diplomatic priority. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Park, a medic with advanced trauma surgery training and fluency in 4 regional languages, leaned forward to study population distribution data. "Ma'am, the cultural complexity suggests that any rescue operation would need to navigate multiple tribal territories and political relationships that probably don't align with geographical boundaries." Williams activated additional intelligence displays showing communication intercepts, cultural analysis reports, and diplomatic assessments that painted a picture of extraordinary complexity. The captured aid workers are being held by a coalition of local groups whose motivations include economic, political, and cultural factors that conventional military action would likely inflame rather than resolve. Chen studied the intelligence data with the methodical analysis that had become her trademark. The operational environment presented exactly the type of multifaceted challenge where aggressive military action could achieve immediate tactical results while creating strategic disasters that would persist for years. "Major," she said carefully, "what's the timeline for this operation?" Williams smiled slightly, recognizing that Chun was asking the right questions. "That's one of the complications. Traditional special operations doctrine would emphasize rapid action to prevent the situation from deteriorating. But intelligence analysis suggests that hasty action could destabilize political relationships across the entire region." She activated timeline projections showing how different operational approaches might affect long-term regional stability. Aggressive direct action could achieve rapid resolution of the immediate hostage situation, but might trigger cultural and political responses that would create ongoing security problems for months or years. Lieutenant David Chong, a cultural affairs specialist with advanced degrees in regional studies and conflict resolution, examined the political complexity data. "Major, this looks like a situation where the tactical solution and the strategic solution might be completely different approaches." Williams nodded grimly. "Which is why this mission was specifically designed for leaders who can think beyond conventional tactical parameters." She activated a comprehensive mission briefing that outlined objectives extending far beyond simple hostage rescue. The operation required establishing relationships with multiple tribal groups, negotiating complex cultural and political agreements, and achieving resolution of the immediate crisis while strengthening long-term regional stability. Chun felt the familiar sensation of pieces clicking into place as she analyzed the operational requirements. This was exactly the type of mission where her methodical approach and emphasis on thorough planning would be essential rather than merely tolerated. "Ma'am," she said, "this mission requires leadership that can coordinate multiple objectives simultaneously while adapting to cultural and political factors that might change rapidly based on our actions." Williams studied Chen's expression, recognizing the analytical process that had made her reports essential reading for senior special operations planners. "Sergeant Chun, you've been selected as team leader for this operation specifically because your previous missions demonstrated exactly the type of adaptive leadership this situation requires." The announcement surprised everyone in the room, including Chun herself. Traditional special operations protocol emphasized seniority and proven aggressive leadership under combat conditions. Selecting a sergeant to lead a mission of this complexity represented a significant departure from established procedures. Rodriguez looked up from his communication planning materials. "Ma'am, with respect, what's the command structure for an operation this sensitive?" Williams activated organizational charts showing reporting relationships that extended directly to theater command level. This operation reports through channels that bypass traditional command hierarchies. Success requires leadership that can adapt to circumstances that can't be anticipated through conventional planning. Chen understood that she was being entrusted with responsibilities that typically fell to officers with significantly more experience and higher ranks. But she also recognized that the mission requirements aligned perfectly with the leadership characteristics that had made her seem unsuitable for traditional special operations roles. "Major, what's the timeline for mission initiation?" Williams checked her secure tablet, displaying real-time intelligence updates. "Insertion begins in 72 hours. But Sergeant Chun, this mission doesn't follow traditional timeline parameters. Success might require weeks or months of careful relationship building and cultural negotiation." Park studied medical intelligence reports showing health conditions among local populations. "Ma'am, the humanitarian situation suggests that establishing medical assistance programs might be as important as the immediate rescue operation." Williams smiled at Park's assessment. "Exactly the type of thinking this mission requires. Traditional special operations focuses on immediate tactical objectives. This mission requires leaders who can see connections between immediate actions and long-term consequences." Chong activated cultural analysis displays showing tribal relationships and historical patterns that would influence local responses to American military presence. The cultural complexity suggests that any military action needs to be coordinated with extensive diplomatic and cultural awareness initiatives. Chen studied the comprehensive mission requirements, recognizing that success would depend on exactly the type of methodical planning and adaptive leadership that had consistently been undervalued in traditional special operations assessments. Major, what support assets are available for this operation? Williams activated logistics displays showing resources that extended far beyond conventional military capabilities. You'll have access to cultural advisors, diplomatic liaisons, medical specialists, and communication assets that can maintain coordination with multiple tribal groups simultaneously. Rodriguez examined communication protocols that included linguistic specialists and cultural interpretation capabilities. This is definitely not a standard direct action operation. Williams deactivated the holographic displays and addressed the team with the gravity appropriate for their mission's significance. Ladies and gentlemen, this operation represents a test of whether special operations capabilities can evolve to address the complex challenges that define modern conflict environments. Chun understood that their mission success or failure would influence special operations doctrine and selection criteria for years to come. The methodical leadership approach that had been consistently questioned was about to face its most significant test in an operational environment where traditional aggressive tactics could achieve immediate results while creating long-term disasters. "Ma'am," she said, "we'll need extensive cultural preparation and relationship mapping before we can develop tactical approaches that address both immediate objectives and long-term consequences." Williams nodded approvingly. "Sergeant Chun, that's exactly why you were selected for this mission. Your previous operations demonstrated the ability to achieve tactical success while maintaining strategic awareness of broader implications." As the briefing concluded and team members began preparing for their individual mission responsibilities, Chen reflected on the extraordinary nature of their assignment. She was being asked to lead a mission that required every characteristic that had made her seem unsuitable for traditional special operations roles. The quiet, methodical approach that had been consistently dismissed as lacking command presence was about to be tested in an operational environment where loud, aggressive leadership could trigger cultural and political disasters that would persist for generations. Over the following 72 hours, Chen's team conducted preparation activities that differed dramatically from traditional special operations training. Rather than focusing exclusively on weapons, tactics, and aggressive action, they studied cultural patterns, historical relationships, and diplomatic protocols that would be essential for mission success. Chen found herself coordinating with cultural advisors, diplomatic specialists, and regional experts whose knowledge extended far beyond conventional military intelligence. The mission planning process emphasized understanding rather than overpowering, relationship building rather than tactical dominance, and long-term consequences rather than immediate results. Park immersed herself in medical protocols that could address humanitarian needs among local populations while supporting the primary rescue mission. Rodriguez developed communication procedures that could maintain coordination with tribal groups whose languages and cultural practices differed significantly from conventional military communication methods. Chang created cultural awareness materials that helped team members understand historical grievances, tribal relationships, and political sensitivities that would influence local responses to their presence. The preparation process resembled diplomatic training more than traditional special operations mission planning. As insertion day approached, Chen received a secure communication from Major Williams that provided final intelligence updates and tactical guidance. The message concluded with an observation that captured the significance of their mission. "Sergeant Chen, this operation will test whether special operations leadership can evolve to address challenges that require more than superior firepower and aggressive tactics. Your success or failure will influence military doctrine for decades to come." Chun understood that her quiet, methodical leadership style was about to face the ultimate test in an operational environment where traditional approaches could achieve immediate tactical success while creating strategic disasters that would define regional relationships for years. The insertion helicopter lifted off from Forward Operating Base Sentinel at 0300 hours, carrying Chen's team toward an operational area where success would require every characteristic that traditional special operations selection criteria had consistently undervalued. As they flew through the darkness toward their destination, Chen reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From being consistently overlooked in leadership selection processes to commanding a mission that could reshape special operations doctrine, her career had demonstrated that effective leadership often emerged from unexpected sources when circumstances demanded competence over conventional characteristics. The helicopter approached the insertion point, a remote valley surrounded by mountains that had witnessed centuries of conflict, cultural exchange, and political complexity that defied simple military solutions. As Chun prepared to lead her team into an environment where traditional aggressive tactics could trigger disasters that would persist for generations, she felt confidence in the methodical approach that had once made her seem unsuitable for special operations roles. The leader they had never picked was about to prove that true command presence emerged not from volume or aggression, but from the wisdom to understand complex situations and the competence to adapt leadership style to match operational requirements. Her voice, steady and sure, would guide her team through challenges that required more than superior firepower and rapid decision-making. In the darkness below, tribal communities that had maintained their independence for centuries awaited the arrival of American Special Operations Forces whose mission success would depend on understanding rather than overpowering, relationship building rather than tactical dominance, and strategic thinking rather than aggressive action. The quiet leader who had been consistently dismissed for lacking traditional command presence was about to demonstrate that effective leadership in complex operational environments required exactly the characteristics that had made her seem unsuitable for conventional special operations roles. Her methodical planning, cultural sensitivity, and strategic thinking were about to prove essential for a mission that traditional approaches couldn't accomplish. As the helicopter descended toward the insertion point, Chen prepared to lead a mission that would test whether special operations capabilities could evolve to address the challenges that increasingly defined modern conflict environments. The success or failure of her leadership approach would influence military doctrine, selection criteria, and training methodologies for years to come. The leader they never picked was about to lead the most important mission of her career, using exactly the characteristics that had consistently been undervalued in traditional assessments. Her steady voice would guide her team through operational complexities that required more than aggressive action and rapid decision-making. And in the mountains ahead, centuries of cultural complexity and political relationships awaited a leader whose methodical approach and adaptive thinking might finally prove that true command presence emerged from competence rather than volume, from wisdom rather than aggression, and from understanding rather than overpowering force. The helicopter touched down in the valley darkness, and Chen's team began the most significant test of unconventional leadership in modern special operations history. The quiet leader who had been consistently overlooked was about to prove that effective leadership spoke through results rather than volume, through competence rather than aggression, and through the wisdom to choose the right approach for each unique operational challenge. Her voice, steady and sure, would guide her team through complexities that traditional tactical approaches couldn't resolve, demonstrating that true leadership emerged not from predetermined characteristics, but from the ability to adapt and excel when circumstances demanded more than conventional military solutions could provide.